A spiritual approach to emergent technology written and read by Unicole Unicron. Please consider purchasing the book or donating to UNICULT if you can. Social media platforms. When thinking about the future of social media platforms, it is important to make the distinction between a predatory platform and an interconnected system. Social media platforms might seem like a system of interconnection, but as we learn about their practices more and more, we realize that they are actually systems of manipulation and surveillance. As we proceed into the age of truth, we will be able to see these nefarious motivations more and more clearly. We are on a path of great healing, and healing includes self-respect. Eventually, the false, shiny veneer that social media offers us of interconnectedness will peel away, and we will see these platforms for what they really are. As the tools to create and maintain websites and platforms become more and more accessible, truly benevolent systems will be made. People will be able to see and feel the difference between predatory and benevolent systems, and they will flock to those systems which actually serve them. The future of social media is amorphous, and it will be ever-changing as trends of society change. At the root, it will connect us with those who share our same values and interests, entertain us, and allow us to express ourselves authentically. Eventually, ego-based forms of expression for the hope of admiration and likes will fade as we evolve, and we will find instead that we enjoy building communities of mutual support more than competing with one another. The technology of governance. A quote from Thomas Jefferson. Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. Social credit systems, rules, and laws. Introduced to most Americans through an episode of the television show Black Mirror, the idea of social credit scores seems, on the surface, little more than a dystopian nightmare. Social credit scores, as depicted in the show, are available for everyone to see, from bus drivers to baristas and even dating app profiles. One's fall from grace signifies becoming an outcast in society, where you no longer have rights or privileges afforded to you. To most Americans' horror, the Chinese government has adopted this concept and imposed it on their citizens. In China's case, infractions that can lower your points include larger offenses, like not paying a fee you are required to pay, but also extend to breaking minor laws like jaywalking, putting out cigarettes on the street, driving badly, or posting fake news online. You can even get points docked for playing too many video games or wasting money. The consequences of having a low social credit score in China means citizens might not be able to buy train tickets or flight tickets, have their internet speeds throttled, have to pay deposits on things other people don't have to make deposits on, or even limitations with getting jobs or into certain schools. American news coverage is perhaps rightly slanted, calling posters on the sides of Chinese buildings and in town squares with the words trust and honesty propaganda. When interviewed, most Chinese people think the social credit scores are a good thing. They believe in the system and say, so long as you don't do anything wrong, you won't be punished. They seem to really believe in it and feel that it benefits them and their communities. I want to ask the question, do social credit scores potentially make sense? If they were perfected, could there be a place for them in Unitopia? Or are they inherently a system of social control that represses the citizen? The same critiques of any law system can be applied to the social credit system. Are the laws just? Who is imposing the laws? Do the laws exist to reward certain demographics while punishing others? From the perspective of being an American in an oligarchy that claims to be a democracy, me and my peers are skeptical at best of the forces that govern us. Institutional and overt racism, lobbying, and other mass corruption, and living in a non-supportive system with regards to education and healthcare, have created a quiet class of revolutionaries and our less optimistic cohorts, the doomers. Most people understand that the system is not here to help us. Despite this, the majority still desperately relies on these institutions to guide them. This relationship is similar to a toxic parent-child relationship, where the child doesn't yet have the resources or wherewithal to go out on their own. With a level of pause, the majority continues to buy into whatever happens, be it stay-at-home mandates, trillion-dollar government bailouts that benefit corporations rather than people, and an increasing national debt with no end in sight. Chinese citizens who are interviewed by American media outlets truly seem happy with the system. As an American, my head spins. How could they trust a governance system? Perhaps they fear punishment in speaking out against the system, or alternatively, their collectivist mindset paired with their blind trust of the government is enough. Or could it be the Chinese government is actually accountable and trustworthy? This last thought is dispelled by first-hand Chinese citizens' accounts of the oppressive and violent tactics sometimes employed by their government, of which Americans are also all too familiar with our own instances, like the police violence during the Black Lives Matter protests and historic murders of community organizers. Despite the mystery of a trusting populace and a corrupt government, we can linger for a few moments on the fantasy that a government could, theoretically, be trustworthy. In Unitopia, this will certainly have to be the case. When I was working in a Montessori preschool in Seattle, I asked each of my coworkers a difficult question. At what point do we insist the children be socialized, and at what point do we let them be free? Every person I asked was a deep-thinking, deep-feeling educator who had dedicated their lives to caring for children. Yet they were all somewhat perplexed by this question. Most referred me to the Montessori Model as an answer. The Montessori Model prepares young children for a certain world. Practicing with their finger muscles prepares them to write with a pencil. Having the option to choose from many different types of work and play gives them a perceived feeling of freedom while teaching them to operate in limited structures with specific expectations. The children at this school were polite, deep-thinking, deep-feeling, and seemed to all have a strong sense of self. They were easy to manage as a group, nap time excluded, and I felt like I could easily call most of them my genuine friends, because despite the fact that they were all under the age of 5, we shared a certain level of effective communication. The socialization that these children were exposed to and the expectations imposed on them allowed them to operate in a way that set them up for a certain type of success in a certain world. All socialization does this. Again, we can think of the relationship of the government and its citizens as a parent-child relationship. At what point do the masses have enough autonomy to stop being governed? Additionally, what mechanisms enable people, be them children or adults, to succeed within a social model? While working with children and while training dogs, I learned that punishment is never effective. It has long-term traumatic consequences, while clear communication and systems of reward for good behavior often work much better in both the short and long term. Systems of reward have to be deeply considered because simply bribing children to do what you want isn't enough to create positive circumstances. Bribing children merely creates manipulative little jerks who feel constantly entitled to reward. Bribing children also leads to a life of emotional instability and an external reward system that perpetuates feelings of isolation and loneliness. When certain types of attention or reward are not being given to them by others, these individuals may spiral in feelings of lack with regards to their self-worth. This is a lifelong problem that many have to work hard to overcome. Just like children, adults need systems of deep reward that encourage behavior that is beneficial to both them and the society as a whole. Determining this beneficial structure should be the goal of all governments. Governmental and social control is really just a larger scale process of parenting individuals until they are autonomous beings, capable of harmonious behavior. Harmonious autonomy is possible when each person understands that we are all one and act in accordance with their heart. The desire to belong with the tribe and not be outcast from the family is at the root of social conformity. The inherent need to belong is manipulated by governments and the powers that be by creating laws and by projecting ideals of model citizens in our media. We are made to believe that laws keep the order, but very rarely do laws actually prevent crimes from happening. Instead, crime-doing citizens do what they want with the hope that they won't be caught. Punishment, then, comes later, and the punishment of jail, prison, or fines do little to discourage future crimes. Our system is horrendously inefficient. Think of the 60s television show Leave It to Beaver and the transformation of the phrase keeping up with the Cleavers into the more modern television show Keeping Up with the Kardashians. In both cases, families are presented as the epitome of entertainment and success. The narrative of who these people are, how they relate to each other, their dreams, goals, aspirations, and expressions, becomes shared consciously or subconsciously with the masses. When Americans balk at social credit systems, they neglect to see the social control mechanisms at play in their own backyard. It is important to acknowledge the differences in American culture versus Chinese culture when we are applying a system that seems to work abroad, while being shocked and skeptical from the American perspective. When we acknowledge that rules and laws are enforced in a myriad of different technologies, be it social credit points, social shaming, media manipulation, police and digital surveillance, or the overt enforcement of laws, we can see their similarities. We can then shift our focus to the question of, what are these social rules meant to do? Who are they meant to serve? What is their actual benefit to individuals and our society? Additionally, we must ask, what is the technology, media, or mechanism by which these social rules are modeled and enforced? Currently, DI and surveillance systems are used to monitor people in a panopticon dystopian nightmare, where citizens are always watched. The nature of the panopticon, or being constantly surveilled, is control via a state of fear. This fear of feeling watched has been used to keep people in line, but the cost of instilling perpetual fear in your citizens is high. Stress and fear are lower vibrational states that prevent joy and innovation from flourishing in a system. Additionally, these emotions have significant health consequences and drive up the cost and need for healthcare. In a panopticon system, the individual fears repercussion for anything that is potentially a punishable offense. These punishable offenses are usually referred to as laws, but when social credit systems are involved, it becomes much more far-reaching than what is determined by a judge. When the rules of society are overbearing or ever-changing, the fear increases to the point that the individual either suffers greatly with self-repression or finally breaks and rebels. Using DI algorithms and surveillance technology to merely keep people in a state of fear for the purpose of social control is a detrimental practice for all. Additionally, when algorithms, DI, and surveillance technologies are used in governance and social credit mechanisms, the problem of accountability becomes murky. It may never be wise to put the rule creation in the hands of an algorithm or DI who does not understand the human experience. Law creators and social manipulators can easily hide behind digital systems that then become difficult to blame for increased widespread anxiety and depression within the society. Can a social credit system ever be based on liberation, or is it inherently and always an attempt to control? These questions are the same that every parent must ask themselves as their children grow, and that every government should ask itself as it attempts to genuinely serve the good of the people. The sheltered child needs compassionate structure to grow. Once they reach a certain level of autonomy, they no longer wish to abide by the rules, and they rebel. This rebellion is a healthy sign that the child is beginning to explore their fullest selves as autonomous individuals in society. Theoretically, technology can be used to create harmonious governance systems, which encourage true liberation, harmony, and peace among a society. Our approach to governance has to undergo radical shifts before any technology like this will ever be attempted. Beneficial governance technology could be done in a way that uses a person's personal data to find out what benefits them, raises their vibration, makes them happy, and fulfills them, and then algorithmically gives the information for how to maximize this joy while working harmoniously with everyone else in the system. A technology like this could be used to help with distribution of jobs and housing, but it should never ever override an individual's personal desire and freedom so long as they are harming none. The goal of the system should be an equal balance of liberation and harmony. In the interim, social credit systems can work as an intermediary to guide individuals into beneficial behavior. For that to work, the entire system would need to be beneficial. For a social credit system to work as a system of benefit rather than detriment, it would need to 1. Be based on rewarding people rather than punishing them. 2. Be applicable to everyone, including the wealthy, the government, and the law-creating citizens and DI. 3. Be beneficial to all individuals and society as a whole, with no slant to a single person or group's agenda. 4. Harm no one. And 5. be monitored to ensure that it is following the above rules. If done with a lot more awareness and consideration than any current attempt, social credit systems could theoretically help people organize themselves in a system that would result in liberation and ascension. As we look into our future at the technologies of governance, be they mind or behavior manipulation or digital-backed surveillance, we will need to analyze the desired autonomy of the citizens. Some citizens and subcultures will grow up faster than others and desire to be outside of government control. To these individuals and subcultures, laws and rules will feel restricting. But to many other individuals and subcultures, rules and laws will help them feel safe and secure, since they have not developed their own sense of power or protection. Rules and laws, then, can exist to help citizens feel safe, while encouraging their growth to autonomy. When we accomplish full autonomy, that is, when each individual understands that we are all one and behaves in a manner that harms none, we will no longer have the need for rules or laws. At this time, Unitopia could be considered to be anarchist, but this is only really harmonious if every person has a shared sense of connection and responsibility to the self and others via the compassion of their own heart. Peace. We will not know peace on this planet until each person learns peace inside their mind. Distraction and overstimulation prevent true peace from arising. Any technology that encourages addiction is truly the enemy of global peace. Individuals must learn to sit with their thoughts rather than have their thoughts provided for them. This is the true path of liberation for individuals and for our advancement of a society as a whole. Technology must work hand in hand to still the mind and empower the user, rather than numb and brainwash users into submission. When we have technology to encourage internal peace in individuals, it will be a massive spiritual breakthrough that will pave the way for Unitopia. Peace begins from within, and then extends out into relationships. Our technology and media need to be created in a way that encourage peace rather than drama. Drama gets attention, and in the attention economy, it wins. For instance, when I started dating someone, Instagram constantly recommended my ex-boyfriend to my new boyfriend, but they didn't recommend any of my other friends. Was this the platform's attempt to engage my new boyfriend on the app more by giving him something dramatic to do? The entirety of the news media is predicated on drama rather than peace. It is a toxic cycle. A techno-utopian government. Government on this planet generally equates to a bureaucratic, corrupt system which siphons money and energy off of the masses in exchange for feelings of security, despite the fact that that security is often nothing more than a myth. Governments prey on the public's feelings of insecurity to pass stricter laws and organizational structures which benefit a few while hindering the rest. The modern delineation of government and corporate affairs is only imagined, as in the U.S. especially, the government is an oligarchy, and laws are passed with the help of bribes, otherwise known as lobbying. When we consider the Unitopian model, it serves us well to put aside the vocabulary of corporations and government, with all their preconceptions, and instead replace them with the broader title of a working social structure. A working social structure is an organized, integrated system of people, goods, and resource distribution that allows certain objectives to be met. When we view the working social structure of government, we see that it collects taxes to be redistributed to goals which the structure deems acceptable. It provides a military to enforce foreign affairs that the structure deems acceptable, a smaller military called the police for local enforcement of behaviors that the structure deems acceptable, quality and safety standards, and other theoretical protection of the people from unfettered capitalism. To understand my theory that information can replace government entirely, we must first understand the goal and role of government in a perfect society. In Unitopia, every person has their basic needs met and has the full freedom to be freely themselves so long as they don't harm anyone. The shift to information as government requires a radical shift in our understanding of behavioral enforcement, societal health, and a society's ability to maintain safety and peace. A Unitopian society is not exactly anarchist in nature. Instead, it reimagines and redistributes power from a corrupt system into a divine one. For this model to effectively work, each person needs to be properly educated in the understanding that we are all one. This is, first and foremost, the most important aspect of creating a utopian society. Empathy as information. The UNICULT concept of all one is simple enough for a child to understand and so effective that even the most cold-hearted narcissist could selfishly see its value. Once an individual fully grasps this concept, their behavior is forever aligned with that of a utopian model citizen. A model citizen of the past was someone who stayed in line, who fit in with the crowd, and who didn't stand out too much. They abided by the rules of society without much fuss. A utopian model rewards someone with a proclivity for this behavioral pattern, and it also rewards people who have other behavioral patterns that would otherwise not be deemed acceptable or appropriate by modern societal norms. Again, the utopian model gives space for all people so long as they do not harm anyone, including themselves. The understanding that we are all one is similar to the Golden Rule, which states, "Treat others as you wish to be treated." The Golden Rule falls short in its ability to create a perfect society, as it doesn't account for diversity in thought, behavioral patterns, desires, talents, or aspects of neurodivergent thought. This pearl of wisdom was given to humanity before they were apparently capable of true empathy on a large scale. Now that we are entering into the new age, humanity is capable of truly empathizing with one another. This means that the Golden Rule is only a first step toward creating a perfect society. Empathy is information. It is, first and foremost, the most important information that we need to replace government. When we as individuals and as a society can empathize with the diverse longings of each person and group, we can create a system that allows for infinite behavior and personality presentation. As a society, we must move away from fear-based judgments and into unconditional love and radical acceptance for our fellow humans and their unique path on Earth. To understand all one on a collective scale, the paradigm must be one of energy. I often use water to explain the distribution of energy on Earth, which is a closed system. Earth is a water-based planet. The water on Earth stays on Earth and is recycled through the system. There is no new water. We have the water that we have. In a closed system like Earth, it does not serve us to attempt to poison one part of the planet. You cannot dump toxins into one river and assume that your waste will be confined to that one regional area. The river will flow to the ocean, seep into the soil, evaporate, and rain down on other regions which you did not intend to poison. Energy moves much the same way as water. When we look at Earth and all of its inhabitants, we understand that whatever affects a certain demographic of inhabitants will eventually spread to affect us all as well. In UNICULT, we define this energy as emotional energy. If a demographic of Earth inhabitants is miserable, their misery will be felt as expressions of those individuals and as the more fluid concept of energetic exchange by all. Their discontent seeps into their surroundings, whether they will it to or not. All one understands that none can thrive while any other suffers. As we are in a closed-loop energy system, we can understand that the well-being of our fellow Earth inhabitants is tied to our own. Even as a selfish person, if one understands all one, their behavior will be one of benefit rather than detriment. The selfish person will be kind and benevolent, helping others out, knowing that it will make their own reality brighter and more vibrant. This aspect of all one allows for a selfish interpretation of the world and still encourages empathetic behavior. Training people in the spiritual truth of all one will not be difficult, as it is easy to see, feel, and prove with only a small amount of practice. The reason why it is not already adopted is due to intentional misrepresentation of truth and information corruption.